Chappell Roan is a singer and celebrity who rose to fame pretty quickly, and she became known not only for her music, but also for her publicly maintaining her boundaries between her work and her private life. Chappell Roan has been very strict and clear about her boundaries that paparazzi and some fans have overstepped from time to time, and she's made it clear that these boundaries are not something that she's willing to compromise on. These incidents have caused discussions online about whether she is justified in having these boundaries or not, considering that she's really popular. I think it's interesting to see these conversations, as these boundaries seem pretty normal if they were said by anyone else. Not wanting to be hounded by paparazzi constantly, not wanting to be bothered when not at work in relation to what her work is, and just generally being allowed to exist as a normal person within her own space. People tend to overstep celebrities' boundaries and privacies just for the fact that they are famous and they owe it to their fans, but are the fans justified in this? Why have we set up a culture where it's okay to encroach into someone's personal life just because they're famous? Why do fans feel entitled to this? In my theory, it's due to parasocial relationships. While disrespecting celebrities' boundaries is definitely not anything new, like Britney Spears or Amanda Bynes, it has definitely become a more noticeable issue with the rise of social media. My name is Gia, and today I will be examining how social media has transformed fandom into stan culture by encouraging unhealthy parasocial relationships and emotional attachment to celebrities and media figures. Platforms like TikTok and Twitter reward intimacy, accessibility, and fan engagement, which create environments where personal boundaries become blurred and toxic fan behavior is normalized. These expectations are further shaped by gender, which influence the kinds of relationships audiences expect from creators. Now, I want to add a quick disclaimer that gender and social media are not the only factors into parasocial relationships, but they are the ones that I deem most important to bring up in this topic. It's a mix of a lot of things, but social media and gender are definitely the ones that I can apply to majority of the cases I'm looking at today. Now, I think it's important to get some definitions out of the way. I just wanted to hop in real quick because I forgot to define what a parasocial relationship was. A parasocial relationship is basically a one-sided psychological bond where a person feels a strong sense of friendship, intimacy, or connection with someone they don't actually know, and it mostly applies to celebrities or public figures. Yeah. Fan is a term for most people who are interested in different media or people. They will interact with the artist occasionally on social media or interact with what they produce. Fans and fandoms can be for anything, like music, art, and games, books, whatever. Casual fans will enjoy the work casually, while fans will delve more into the people behind the work along with the work. Now, stans are a level up from fans and are generally seen as people who are even more devoted than your regular fan. Um, One of the quotes I have here from an article I read is that today's use of stan is slightly less sinister than the original stan. Katie and Powell, a lecturer in sociology and Black Studies at Birmingham City University in England, previously told USA Today, today's usage is more along the lines of unreasonable obsession, but not necessarily crazed stalker, which was from my quote Munson from 2024. Now, the origins of Stan is from Eminem. Eminem created a song called Stan, which is about a fan who's very obsessed and it causes a lot of turmoil in his life and it ultimately ends with his life being taken. And I believe it's important to classify the difference because stans can only really apply to people in my definition. If someone's a fan of a video game like Undertale, for example, they are a fan of it or in the fandom. They cannot be a stan towards it. If they were a fan of the creator Toby Fox, however, they could be considered a stan. And we see stans a lot more in the music industry and social personality, which is now really known more as the influencer industry, as the work of the art itself and the artist are oftentimes interlinked, and it's difficult to be a fan of just the work by itself without bringing the artist up. Now, in order to more illustrate my point about parasocial relationships, I'm going to be doing a small case study on the Dream SMP. Now, if you're unfamiliar, the Dream SMP is a Minecraft creator community that would make YouTube videos and do live streams that were all connected on a shared Minecraft world. They shared their own fictional world with different creators, acting as a different persona or character, and they would all get audience input as well as in between videos and live streams in order to make the videos and skits more interesting and interactive. While the Dream SMP has a ton of creators, the one creator I'm going to be mainly focusing on in this section is Dream Was Taken. Now, Dream Was Taken was a creator who really rose to fame in 2020 in the quarantine and COVID era, and he shot to fame very quickly and very intensely. And I think it's important to bring up Dream and his fans because Dream's fans are notorious for being very parasocial. They've doxed people, given death threats, and harassed people online to anyone who really defied Dream or talked badly about him. And this is not just my opinion, this has also been seen by other creators, other fandoms, and people in online spaces. And even in an article discussing parasocial relationships, they said, quote, the question being about parasocial relationships has been debated heavily, especially when it comes to Dream, a YouTuber who has grown dramatically over quarantine and amassed over 25 million subscribers. He has a large following, largely made up of young teens, many of whom have developed parasocial relationships with him. His fan base is known to be overly defensive of him, going as far as attacking and doxing other creators who say negative word against him. To make matters worse, Dream actively encourages stan culture and refuses to set strict boundaries for his fans, leading to a fan base where many have stalked him and posted uncomfortable things about him, and this was said by Nelson in 2021. Now, while parasocial relationships are not always the fault of the celebrity or the person in power, like the creator, it's important to see how Dream enabled his fans and also kind of encouraged that behavior. Um, a very important case for this is him selling a USB drive that had personal photos, baby photos, and personal effects. Um, he sold this to his fans of a majorly underage audience, mostly around 14 and 15 when he was over the legal age. And this encouraged the relationship with his fans despite how unhealthy it came across as. This became even more complicated considering how young the age of his fans were, and selling his personal access and marketing it as something that is normal within his fan base. And this was also brought to a point by some of his fans, with an ex-fan of his saying, quote, when I was a stan, I didn't really see the problem with this, says Adrian. But it's clear now that this kind of parasocial relationship really helps him in times like this. When fans see you as a friend, even if they don't know you personally or how you act in private at all, they want to defend you like you're their friend and want to believe in every word you say. And this is from Adrian, who was a former Dream SMP stan. I think this is important because the emotional response mirrors friendship despite lacking reciprocal intimacy between the creator and the fans. And I think this is important to my point because it shows the extreme end of parasocial relationships kind of on a spectrum, how fans behave and act when their delusions are encouraged and unchecked. And I personally don't agree with Dream encouraging his fans. It's one thing to be indifferent, but it's another to encourage the behavior. While you may not believe it does not affect you personally, which Dream has said on many occasions he does not mind stan culture, I think it's still important to establish boundaries and maintain a healthy relationship dynamic between a public figure and their fans. Encouraging that behavior makes it seem okay and justifiable, which could bleed into other public figure fandoms and boundaries just because they're a public figure. Now that we've talked about the small case study with Dream SMP, I think it's important to also discuss how people really fall into parasocial relationships. In my opinion, social media has made it really easy for fans to become parasocial. Social media turns public figures into accessible personalities rather than distant celebrities. Parasocial relationships form through the perceived access, and gender changes what kind of access audiences expect between them and celebrities. For men, it's more friendship based, and with women, it's more sexual and relationship based. Audiences expect women to be more inviting, vulnerable, and personal to the viewer, while men can be seen as cooler and kept from a distance, more of a friend vibe. And this is very nuanced and it's not always the case, however, this is more commonly seen. In terms of rewarding toxic behavior with engagement and recognition, fans compete to be noticed, commenting first under posts, regardless of what it is about, and making videos where it's like doing XYZ until said public figure notices me. And I find that quarantine has also boosted these issues as people didn't have jobs or hobbies, which found them turning to social media a lot and looking to online creators in order to find a sense of community. The conditions of quarantine, Valsote added, likely worsened the issue, as many relationships with content creators filled a void left by a lack of in person interaction, which was said by Nelson in 2021. Social media really monetizes intimacy and fake authenticity, as influencers coming across as personal and inviting you into their lives with different videos and tweets they make every day. Before, the only glimpses we had into celebrity lives were tabloids, magazines, articles, and interviews. But now, with constant access, we see more into celebrities' lives and we believe that we begin to know them more on a personal level. This delusion is only supported when said public figures or celebrities interact and engage with fans like they're friends rather than fans. That boundary gets blurred, and when celebrities like or public figures like Roan set actual boundaries and makes the relationship clear, people see them as an asshole, and they come weirded out and offended, assuming it's an issue with her and not how social media has dictated the difference in relationships in our lives. Now, Chaperone and Dream seems to have exact opposite boundaries, and Chaperone even made a post where she said, quote, "When I'm on stage, when I'm performing, when I'm in drag, when I'm at work, an event, doing press, I'm at work. Any other circumstances, I am not in work mode. I am clocked out. I do not agree with the notion that I owe a mutual exchange of energy, time, or attention to people I do not know, do not trust, or who creep me out. Just because they're expressing admiration, women do not owe you a reason why they don't want to be touched or talked to." And she said this in a post made on August 23rd, 2024. Now, Chaperone's boundaries as an artist are the exact opposite of Dream, as she actively pushes to have her privacy maintained and makes it increasingly clear that she does not appreciate or condone any disrespect to her boundaries or how she should be treated as a person, regardless of her fame. Now, this is interesting when we look at other public celebrities who are also women. Sydney Sweeney is also an interesting case, as Sweeney is the opposite of Roan. Her public image reflects how celebrity culture can reward public intimacy and self-branding, doing things like selling her bathwater and soap, overly sexualizing herself, and many more examples. Roan's motives lie under having privacy and normacy. Sweeney's public persona illustrates how celebrity culture can reward openness, intimacy, and self-branding, even when those strategies invite stronger parasocial attachment, and this kind of aligns more with Dream's motives for encouraging parasocial relationships. Now, I found it important to bring up gender in this situation because I think it really changes how we view things. While each celebrity is different on their own, oftentimes, if a parasocial relationship is involved, more of that responsibility and burden will fall onto the woman than the men. Roan has been the center of hate campaigns and backlash for having strict and vocal boundaries about her privacy and the balance between her work life and her personal life. Now, Sweeney's public image demonstrates how female celebrities are often rewarded with branding themselves through accessibility, desirability, and intimacy. And Dream, on the other hand, during the height of his fame, still had massive amounts of support and is still able to continue to have blurred and unclear boundaries between him and his fans without it becoming a trending topic every now and then, like it is with Roan and Sweeney. In my opinion, this becomes important when looking at parasocial relationships on social media. Because if women don't perform for their audience constantly and feed into parasocial relationships, they are scrutinized, insulted, and harassed. Men and women are encouraged into different forms of parasocial performance. Dream feeds into these parasocial relationships with his audience by coming off as a friend, blurring those boundaries between fan and creator, and being rewarded with that with a lot of fame and a lot of content. Sweeney blurs her relationship with her audience by fitting into the role that they gave her, sexualizing herself, selling her bathwater soap, and many more. Roan, however, goes against this and sets her own boundaries. The issue stems from not just control over women's bodies, but also with the system social media has set up. Relationships online with creators and fans should be parasocial. Now, I want to give another disclaimer that parasocial relationships are not identical across gender, but social media rewards public figures who provide intimacy and kind of punishes those who withdraw from it. Now, I want to conclude by saying that parasocial relationships are not simply caused by fans or celebrities, but more by social media. Parasocial relationships are not caused by obsessive fans or irresponsible celebrities. Social media platforms normalize emotional access and reward both creators and audiences for collapsing the boundaries between public performance and a private life. It's not inherently harmful, but it is dangerous. Most people engage with creators and media in healthy ways. The issue begins when platforms reward access so heavily that boundaries begin to feel abnormal. Now, in my opinion, some steps moving forward would be healthier fan culture, which likely doesn't mean becoming less interested in public figures, but recognizing that access is not intimacy. Creators can establish boundaries without being ungrateful, and fans can engage deeply with media without expecting personal relationships in return. Social media has made public figures' lives feel more accessible than ever, but the accessibility is not the same thing as knowing someone.